I should probably make another video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another long overdue Midnight Hobbies build. Definitely coming out much later than planned due to moving to another country and adjusting to a new job, but we're back on track. And today I'll be recreating the scare floor from one of my all-time favourite musicals, Monsters, Inc.
It's a musical!
To start us off, let's build some doors. So using this offcut of foam board, I measured out the size of the doors I wanted to work with and sliced them to size until I had 3 I was happy with. I then ripped off the paper backing, which also ripped off some of the foam. And then began on the details to give each door its own unique style, with the first being a rustic cabin door, of course. Wood texture is my favourite texture to do in miniature form due to its simplicity, and all it takes is a hobby knife and some sculpting tools to engrave it into the foam, and then voila. But you know what would make it look more like wood? Wood. Using some popsicles I sliced down to size, I dressed the door with support beams that I eyeballed the measurements for, which, as we know, is pretty much a staple of being a YouTube crafter these days. I then sliced these baby wisps of wood and glued them together to create the door handle, and build of door 1 was complete. Oh, son of a... Moving on to door number 2, I wanted something a little more nouveau in design, so with some cardboard packaging I seem to have lying around absolutely everywhere, I sliced out a piece to cover the whole front face of the door, before using a popsicle for some reason to measure out the initial shape of what I was going to cut out of the panel, and then decided to use a ruler to make it a bit more finite. I then stuck it to the door and, it's been a while. I then stuck it to the door, there we go, and added a plate for the door handle I'll attach at some point, but decided for some reason not to do it now. I don't know, I don't work here. And finally, door number 3, which I decided to go for something a bit more classic. I did originally conceptualize to have this be Boo's door, but I wanted the colours of the doors to be a bit more punchy, so at least Boo is here in spirit. Same process here for making the door though, just cutting out panel pieces from packaging cardboard and gluing it in place. I did go in with some sculpting tools just to give the impression that they are individual pieces making up the door, but you and I know the truth. With our 3 doors of choice done, we now need to get them framed. So more strips of foam board was cut to the length of each door, as well as a piece with angular corners to cap it off. I did do double of these top pieces for each door as I was turning the side pieces onto their side for added depth against the door, just so it looked like it was actually clamping onto the door and not merely an extension. I glued the frame and held it in place with some pins before double checking I made it to the right size. Yes, okay, and with the glue now dried and the pins removed, the frames were starting to take shape. I peeled off the skin before adding a base plate for the alarm light out of more packaging cardboard, and now I could move on to making the scream canister. Now we can move on to making the scream canisters. Yeah, there we go. Which of course means more packaging cardboard sliced to a weirdly oblong shape. But the real star of the show are these cardboard tubes from rolls of receipt paper that simply need to be cut down to size. I said simply cut down. Oh my god, why can't this be simple? Easy peasy. I then got started adding the little details of the canisters with thin strips of packaging cardboard, which, of course, I eyeballed most of the measurements for. I capped each end with a round piece of foam board before shaving off the edges to make it a bit more rounded, leaving me with these cutesy little canisters ready to capture the screams of children being scarred for life.
It's a musical!
Now back to the frames to finish them off. With more foam board in hand, I sliced out the triangular side clamps that attach to the edge of the frames when they're lowered from the track. And then to add some visual noise so we're not just looking at triangles, I used some cardboard to trace out some circles to build up the little gear sockets at the bottom that in theory would be what rotate the clamps onto the door. But this will be a stationary model that'll probably wind up in a cupboard real soon, so moving parts is not even a consideration. I added a little trim piece to the edge as well as the clamp pieces to the side of the frames since it's easier to glue it this way, and then thought now is a better time than ever to glue the handles onto the door. You know, because flow doesn't exist in the realm of crafts. But now my frames were done, I just need to clamp on the canisters. So with more packaging cardboard to the rescue, I cut out pieces from some very rough sketches that would be glued on after the painting process. I whipped up these little control panels out of more cardboard, which have no right being this cute, and now all of the pieces are ready for paint. A classic brew of Mod Podge and black paint is always our soup of choice to prime every piece, before moving on to painting each piece individually, starting with the doors. Base colours for each were brown for the cabin door of course, blue for the regular and purple for fancy pants over there. Although I think we're going to need a lighter shade than that. Yeah, that's the stuff. A simple mix of the base colour mixed with white was applied in a dry brush to make those edges pop. And for those new to the delicious process of dry brushing, it's basically getting most of the paint out of the brush before going over pieces so that it only hits the edges. It's my favourite part of any craft as it almost immediately takes any piece to looking like it's full of small details and textures when all you did was throw in some little wisps of paint. It's magic.
It's a musical!
No. With the doors out of the way, it was time for the frames, which got a very generic grey coat, as did the adorable little control panels, and touched up the clamp fingers and buttons with black. The clamp body got a metallic silver coat, which I immediately hated, but we'll fix that soon, and some more grey for the little attachments, before adding some more colour to the control panel buttons and hitting all the grey areas with a metallic silver dry brush to give it a wear and tear appearance. I glued the frames to the door with an extra dab on the back for added security, and touched up some of the black that we lost with the dry brushing since I got a little bit carried away. And now back to these monstrosities. The silver was just too dull, so I decided to go for a very dark blue with a light blue dry brush, and silver on the edges, and damn does it look so much better. And here's a little comparison of the silver edge touch-up for those at home. Simply delicious. The canisters got their signature yellow, which I had to apply in many layers because I never seem to learn that it's better to prime with white for yellow than black, before touching up the bands and plates with black and silver. A little brown grime up was added just so it didn't look so dull, and now I could finally glue all of these pieces together. I then only realised I'd forgotten the detail of the power light and was originally going to make something out of this clear plastic, but thought foam would give it a more bulbous appearance. Which, after a glossy red paint job, it definitely did. And now all we need to wrap this up is a base, which of course needs to be a large piece of foam board, of course, which I indented with measured spacing of where I wanted the doors to fit, before texturing the whole thing with a crumpled bit of foil to make it look like aged concrete. And since this is a factory after all, we're going to need some industrial beams to support the wall. So using some thicker pieces of cardstock that had a bit more density than packaging, I cut them into these angular pieces to better encapsulate the design of the film, before capping the edge with another piece of cardstock to make these beams OHS approved. I confirmed the spacing on the base plate before measuring out some cardboard to build up the back wall. I made a couple of pieces so that they could overlap each other, as I wanted the middle one to look like the panel that opens to the windows in the movie, which I sketched onto the piece before defining the gap with a hobby knife and sculpting tools. The mandatory black prime was applied before going in with varying greys for each piece, including a dabbing of lighter grey on the wall pieces to make it look more like concrete, before overindulging again in a lot of dry brushing. Light blue and silver dry brushing was also added to the beams, and a dirty grime up to everything else because I said so. I added the yellow hazard line to the center panel before gluing all of the base pieces together. Almost there now, we just have to add the little floor panels in front of the doors, and I thought this takeaway carton had the perfect texture I was after. So after the signature prime, I dabbed some yellow onto the raised edges as it would be scuffed after years of use, and some silver dry brushing because it's dry brushing. The doors and other little bits and bobs were stuck into place, and that's all there is to it. Hope you enjoyed this build, everyone. I know it's been a while since I've shared anything, but I have 2 more videos already filmed and ready for editing, so I'm hoping to get the next one out soon. Hopefully. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you again soon.